Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Hello, welcome in. First intermission, Avs Wild. I'm Jesse Montano. She is Meghan Angley. And we are noticing a little bit of a trend here these last couple games. Slow and steady wins the race, or at least is going to try to win the race. 0-0 after one. Avs Wild in Minnesota. Meghan, how are you doing? How did you like that first?
I'm doing well, and I like that first period. I am more fully appreciating the strategy of keeping a couple guys out of the lineup and getting them into the lineup tonight. I think it raised eyebrows last night when the scratches were LOC, Parker, Kelly, and Sam Malinsky. But I think in looking at the matchup side by side, you have Chicago, a team that is what it is. They lose that huge piece of Seth Jones. They've got a young goaltender in net, and they're just kind of barreling to the bottom, whereas there's a Minnesota team that's been banged up but has been hovering at the top of the Central all year. They wanted, in my opinion, to put their best foot forward in this second leg in the back-to-back. So they rested a few guys last night. They get them into the game tonight. And that's one of the huge things that jumps off the page at me in this first period is this team looks like they have a little bit of jump. And you look at the minutes of usage line by line, and you see that Logan O'Connor is getting a lot of minutes, and Parker Kelly's eating up minutes, and he's hitting everything in sight. And so there's a lot of energy for a team that is on the second leg of a back-to-back, and it all goes back to depth. You know, he's able to deploy then the Sam Malinskys and the Parker Kellys a little bit more because they are a little bit fresher, and he's still rolling lines 1 through 4. And I think that they were coming at Minnesota in waves in a way that I don't think Minnesota was fully expecting. Minnesota, they haven't won since the deadline. They're trying to climb back in the win column. And I think Colorado posed more of a problem than they probably thought they would. Yeah.
You know, to your point, the first, 5 to 8 minutes felt like they all took place exclusively in Minnesota's end. The Avs were snapping the puck around, retrieving the puck really whenever they wanted it. It was a strong start, and I think that's, I've been trying to, we're 3 games. This is the 3rd game in since the deadline for the Avs. And I've just been trying to pay attention to what looks different about this group, from night to night. Are they getting more consistent? Do they look more experienced? That's a big word that we've heard thrown around from Nathan MacKinnon, Jared Bednar, Chris McFarland in the last week. More experience, more veteran leadership, And so that's kind of what I've been looking for here. And what I like about what we've seen, and I know this isn't necessarily since the deadline, but going back to that Penguins game, that was a game where they didn't have their best night. They were battling it a little bit. Pittsburgh played well for, being a struggling Pittsburgh team. And the Avs found a way to kind of scratch and claw and get their way through that game. I look at what we saw last night against a Chicago team that, again, I think played all right. Spencer Knight played well. The Avs were doing some good things, but just really couldn't get things to go, couldn't generate a lot of shots, but they stuck with it and they found a way to really break out there in the 3rd period. And, I told someone today in the office, I said that, just watching that game last night, I don't know if that's a game last night that the Avs win 2 months ago. And then you look at tonight, and I wanted to see, what does this start look like? You just won 6 games after, over the course of playing 6 straight at home. The last time you were on the road, it didn't go well. What type of response was this group going to come out with tonight? What type of effort level were we going to see? Because we've seen it multiple times this year, going back to that Pittsburgh game, where the energy has just felt lacking. It hasn't felt like, where you and I have talked about where we think it needs to be. And in a game like this, where you're 4 points up on a division opponent, they have a game in hand. This is a big game with a lot of valuable points up for grabs. And from an effort standpoint, I think I really liked a lot of what the Avs did there in that first period. Execution wasn't perfect at all times. They struggled to generate a lot of offense. But this feels like a game to me that if you stick with that process and that effort that you had in the first 20 minutes, things are going to swing for you.
It certainly feels sustainable for the Avs because they're getting so much more support lines 1 through 4. I think that is the biggest difference in this team post-deadline compared to what we were seeing before. But there have been a lot of good habits that have been building even before the deadline. It's been 31 goals over 6 games for the Colorado Avalanche. And so they're getting goal scoring also throughout the lineup. And I think it's because it's more balanced. It's a more balanced attack. I look at even in the final seconds of that period 1, that the Avs are still pushing because every second is a second that can be used as an advantage. And Jack Drury capitalizing off of a turnover in the Avs D zone, turning that into an offensive opportunity up ice with Logan O'Connor. Jared Bednar then puts on the top lines to create that chance, and it ends up being this extended zone time, just shift after shift with some of the best players on the ice, making a push in the final seconds. They're kind of on Minnesota's necks for that entire first 20 minutes. And it's exactly the type of pressure they need to apply by committee. Like, everybody's full hands on deck. I like Mackenzie Blackwood too. I think he comes up with huge saves throughout the course of that period, especially on the penalty kill. And I've liked the way the penalty kill has looked the last 2 games. Obviously not the ideal situation for how to start this game, but they kill it off with ease. And so I think some of the things that they're doing well as a group translate to why the kill has been successful lately too.
There's going to be a couple of players I want to talk about here, but I'm going to start with something that you called out in the Avs being able to rest players, give them the night off last night, get them back in. One of those players was Sam Malinski, and I think that's one of the ones that a lot of fans were the most puzzled by, of him being the one to come out of the lineup last night, coming on the heels of what Jared Bednar even described what was probably Sam Malinski's best game in the NHL so far. Did he stand out to you in particular, any one way or the other in that first period, after getting that night off last night and being one of the guys who's able to be fresh legs here tonight?
What I notice is just how well his game complements Gerard's game. I really do like those two as a pair. I think it's taken some time for them to come around too, because the first showing of that pairing, I didn't know if I was fully convinced of what it could be. But tonight, just some of the glimpses I'm seeing are 2 players both heavily involved in the attack. And because they read well off one another, they can activate, get deeper in the offensive zone, and it's not quite as vulnerable or risky as I've seen it be previously. And that leads to Sam Malinski. He registers an attempt blocked in getting a shot attempt to the net and a takeaway. So a little more aggression in Malinski's game, which is exactly that what Jared Bednar talked about needing to see from Malinski. I'm seeing him digging for pucks in the corner in his own end, to trying to tend to his D-zone coverage as well. And that's exactly what he has to continue to do, because I don't view him sitting out last night as any sort of demotion. I actually view it as a reward that he's getting the Minnesota game, because in my opinion, it's the tougher of the 2 in the back-to-back, and he gets to play in front of friends and family. So I think that there was a lot of trust given to Malinski in getting the Minnesota game. And, in one period, I've liked what I've seen of that pairing.
Well, Meghan, we talk a lot about load management, not us necessarily, but just in, the sporting world, load management, older players. You even look at a guy like Erik Johnson, who, you're not going to play that guy every night, not just because you feel like you maybe have better options in the lineup, but he is an older player who's put his body through a lot. I look at this and I think about what the Anaheim Ducks did last year with Leo Carlsson. I don't think that, load management for young players is necessarily a bad thing. I have kind of been beating the drum here, for a large stretch of the season where we've seen a dip in Sam Malinski's game leading up to the Four Nations break, where I've said, look, I think this is a player that could really benefit from some time off and sitting out a couple games. It's hard to go from that transition of college and then even the American League up to the NHL full-time, playing with that schedule, the practice schedule, the meetings, the workouts on top of how often you're playing. I think Sam Malinski's been one of the most improved players coming out of the Four Nations break. And I think if they're able to balance his minutes and the nights that he's in the lineup with Erik Johnson as someone that you trust coming in and being able to give Sam Malinski a break here and there, I actually think that's only going to serve Sam Malinski better and ultimately this back end as a whole better. The consequence, I guess not consequence, that makes it sound like it's inherently a bad thing. The side effect of Sam Malinski playing with Sam Girard is you do have Ryan Lindgren and Josh Manson together. Now, you and I were talking about this pairing last night as the Avs were taking on the Chicago Blackhawks and saying, we just found it interesting how much Jared Bednar really does seem like he likes playing these guys together. And the only reason we find it odd, Two reasons. One, they're kind of the same type of player. You're looking for kind of the same thing out of both Ryan Lindgren and Josh Manson. And two, Meghan, Jared Bednar specifically called out the fact before these two actually got in a game together that he would probably want to keep them separated to spread that around a little bit. What are you thinking of that pair? I did notice a turnover from Lindgren I didn't like in that period, but otherwise, I think he's fitting in pretty nice next to Josh Manson, despite them being kind of samey.
Yeah, I thought I would hate it as well. And I still feel like I haven't seen enough to fully form an opinion, because what I've seen, I would use the word fine. I'm fine with it. I like what I've seen made possible on the penalty kill with both these players. I think that just makes the bottom line for players like Makar and Taves a lot better at the end of the night. And so that's going to be a huge value add for Lindgren. And, you know, I'm going to be cautious in saying this, but everything that's been described of Lindgren is this heart of a warrior who will sell out for his teammates. And I don't think that's been really necessary of him in the games that I've seen so far. So it's not to say that he isn't doing these things. It's that he hasn't really had to. So
yeah,
I think that there's an interesting component of what him and Manson do similarly, maybe even making it less required shift by shift, because they both bring physicality. It's maybe not so necessary for Lindgren to have to completely sacrifice his body every shift when he's playing with a player like Josh Manson is maybe the more articulate way of saying that. And so I'll be curious to see then how the minutes shake up when the night is done, because it does feel like what is beneficial about that pair together is that they can just eat up big minutes together.
Yeah, he's not needing to, but he keeps finding himself in the way of danger. Does take a puck off the nose in the first period. Seems no worse for wear. Got some repairs on the bench. But yeah, like you said, he's not needing to, but Ryan Lindgren just seems to be a magnet for stuff that hurts. Meghan, one player that stood out to me in a positive way, I really liked what I saw from him in the first period. I thought he popped off the ice a couple times, was Brock Nelson. I noticed multiple plays for him, not only in the offensive zone, but making plays away from the puck as well. Not only tonight, but through these first couple games here with Brock Nelson, what have you thought of his fit, and did he jump off the ice to you the same way he did to me?
Well, through the couple games here, I've really loved his fit. I know that the Chicago game maybe was not as exciting as the initial Toronto game was, but I still saw so much value in his fit. And I think what I like about the fact that he stuck out to you in this period is kind of minute by minute, his line is probably not even being utilized as fully as we've seen it the last couple of games. And I think some of that is just to make it a sustainable runway for the rest of this game for that second line. But he popped off the page on my end as well. And it is what he's doing through the neutral zone to help drive play north. I think that he is aggressive and he is so big. He uses his reach to recover and protect pucks. And I think that he's playing so well alongside of what Nichushkin is doing that even I'm watching the broadcast with Minnesota's announcers, and they kind of mistake Nichushkin and Brock Nelson a little bit on a play at one point. So I think it's kind of a testament to the way in which his game is so complementary to what Val Nichushkin does. And I've liked the fit a lot so far.
We're getting ready here to drop the puck on the second period. Again, like we said off the top, I don't think that was a bad period for the Avs by any stretch of the imagination. I think they did a lot of good things. I think they had good pace, good energy to start. But just like last night, you are in a game that's 0-0. Meghan, from your perspective, what do you want to see change, do differently, more of the same from this Avs group, going from what was a strong first period and trying to build on that to get a lead here?
In looking at the last couple of games, a lot of it still has been headed up by the top of the lineup. So I'm expecting big things out of Ross Colton in this game. He's had a good track record against Gustafson lately in games now. And so I think, too, Charlie Coyle has juiced up that third line in a lot of ways as well. So I liked the depth in general in that first period, too. I like Jury. I like Kelly. I liked OC. So I'm just kind of looking at the depth generally. Like if Kiviranta wants to continue scoring goals, I don't care how they happen. I think it's a fun storyline. So that's what I'm keying in on in this game, especially because The top guys have been doing exactly what's been asked of them. They're probably going to be a little bit exhausted by the end of this game. Can the depth in this lineup provide some energy and some momentum and maybe even some goal support?
You know, Megan, you bring up Kiviranta. He's a guy that I'm with you. I would love to see him keep this going. I'll be honest. That's the one spot on this lineup where Yoel Kiviranta fits on that third line. That's the one part of the forward group that I don't feel really, really good about. You and I talked about it on the deadline of I wanted to see one more depth upgrade because I feel a lot more comfortable with Yoel Kiviranta on that fourth line than up on the third. But to your point, goals in 3 straight games. We've seen him elevate his game, especially last year in the playoffs. So I'm with you. I'd like to see him continue to contribute and continue to show, hey, I can hang on a third line, especially when I've got Charlie Coyle, Ross Colton, guys that I fit really well with. I think that would not only be good for Kivy, but that would be good for the Avs to build a little bit of confidence in, hey, this isn't a weak spot, and Miles Wood's game falling off a cliff isn't as worrisome as maybe it could have been. I'm with you. Want to see some depth contributions. I think Brock Nelson gets one here tonight. He's back home in Minnesota, War Road guy. I think he's going to get one. I really liked his first period, and I'm with you. I think his fit next to Val is excellent. Do you have any predictions here for the second?
Nope.
No. Easy.
I feel like I gave them. I want Ross Colton to do big things.
Oh, you did say Ross Colton. You're totally right. All right. Okay, that's going to do it here. Getting ready to drop the puck. Second period in Minnesota. Megan and I will be back. Second intermission, then again post-game. So make sure you're coming right back here. Then she's Megan Angley. I'm Jesse Montano. We will talk to you guys here in 20 minutes.